Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. I thought about speaking uh, about and certain observations I've made about the differences between what is interdimensional and what is multidimensional. We are living in a world where we are objects that through evolution we have become subjects to ourselves. When we look at others, they become a subject to us too. We receive others, we don't receive only ourselves as an object and a subject, but we receive others as an object and as a subject. Now, the identity of the individual is a subject, meaning that, let's say right now somebody found the portal, and they went into another dimension. It's as if whatever object they would find in that dimension would also have a subject, a subjective significance. It's like the dimensions of the being suggest the dimensions of being it has access to. By the way, welcome everyone. I mean, in the chat section. So, yeah, guys, let me change the song. Actually, the song is too fast-paced. Okay, this is better. So, just pretty much this episode's focusing on observations. I used this metaphor in one of the talks that we have a cake that is cut into pieces, and we have a cake where, regardless of if it's cut into pieces or not, it is noticing other cakes, you know. Now, multidimensionality, we can choose to say that interdimensionality is a part of multidimensionality. We can say that when we look at a dimension as a human being, we have observable, an observable dimension, an observable universe, a view of a universe, and an unobservable universe. So it can be the case that, let's say there were other dimensions, even if we still went to another dimension, that dimension could still have an unobservable universe, so there's more to the unobservable universe. This analogy of a cake cut into pieces is the interdimensional, the analogy of different types of cakes. Let's say it's multidimensional. So, as I was saying earlier, we are objects that have become subjects to ourselves, that have evolved to a subjective position to ourselves. Now, imagine instead of a cake, it is a person. Instead of a, instead of a cake, imagine it's a person. So it would imply that the person can literally just what they are be divided into dimensions. There are dimensions within. For example, you can see that, like imagine a cake being cut into pieces, your life experiences in chunks of memories. We experience the living reality moment to moment to moment. When I wonder about how who I am in this moment, and the memory of who I was, for example, 10 years ago, that memory is a different eyes of me compared to this moment. I would consider that interdimensional. So, whether it's the person noticing a memory of their own self in a different place, whether the being noticing a different sort of just fragmentation of the psyche somehow is projecting subjective multidimensionality. You know, that's one side of the coin, that we cannot avoid the interdimensional, we cannot avoid man's communication with deeper dimensions of himself. You know, just the Homo sapien, the creature that we are. You know, it's like it has a relationship with the world, it has a relationship with itself. The relationship I would say it has with itself is very intimate, and I would say it leads to the interdimensional. You know, for me, like, we have this view, like, okay, I'll give you an example. If I see someone, okay, in this dimension, right, in this dimension, like, let's say two human beings talk to one another, that's interdimensional communication. That's not interdimensional, that's communication in one dimension. Now, imagine there was a human being in a parallel universe. That means imagine there was a parallel version of you, okay? And this parallel version of you, or just some parallel human, this parallel human, imagine this a humanity from a parallel universe decided to make contact, for example, with us, right? That would be interdimensional, you know. It would be a relationship of communication between dimensions. So I would say right now, most human beings are practicing a communication in what appears to be a singular dimension. I'm not going to. Here's the thing: like, only from a scientific view, we have three dimensions of space and the fourth dimension of time. Now, when it goes beyond the fourth dimension of time, we cannot fathom it. Do you know? Similar to how you can draw, or I wouldn't say fathom, but you can't, like, you can draw a 3D cube on a 2D piece of paper, but it is still 2D, right? And all of human knowledge, I find, is like a 2D analysis of a three-dimensional phenomenon. Like, it's either just remains as unknown poetry or it's hollow knowledge. For me, that scene, you sometimes see it in movies where there's this person who's afraid of heights and he wants to cross this thing, this pole between two cliffs or something. The person is afraid of heights, and they are just telling themselves, "Don't look down, don't look down, don't look down." The person is speaking to themselves. I would say that's interdimensional communication. That means whether the person thinks it's a phenomenology from an abstract place, or it's a memory from the unconscious resurfacing. You know, sometimes I've thought about this idea, I call it recycled memories. Sometimes I feel memories are recycled. So we can say that person on the cliff, like running, crossing that pole between the two cliffs, that person is talking, self communication is interdimensional. Other communication could be multidimensional. The thing about multiple dimensions is that the interdimensionality means there's a bridge between the two dimensions. The multidimensional doesn't necessarily mean there is a bridge. You know, there's a traditional view of getting through dimensions of like finding a door, and you're like, oh my god, did I find like some mystical door, and you know, some sort of portal kind of sense. The other way would be actually not to find a portal, to become the destination before journeying. So think of it this way. Right now, we have a body, we have a mind, and imagine we have a soul. Now imagine there's other dimensional beings. I mean, this world is so big. Look at how many visible creatures there are. There's potentially probably a lot of invisible creatures. So I'll go with the analogy: body, mind, soul of being one. Let's say creature one, and body, mind, soul of creature two. Okay, creature one and two. Let us suppose they are in a different dimension, different physical dimension than us. They might not be in a different mental dimension. We might have the same access to a mind space as other dimensional beings, but we may not have access to the same body space. You know, so it could be the case that if we think we're a body, just keep this body, mind, soul thing like three circles, like inside one another. You know, the outer circle being soul, or whatever way you to see it. But I'd say it would be something like this, where right now I have a body in this plane of existence, in the human plane of existence. I have a mind which is localized in the physical plane of existence, but the mind is not local to it. The mind is in a strange way here, but not here. Kinda in a way where I feel it comes to us from Christian wisdom, where evidently Christ had said to be in the world, but not of it. Right, so the mind is in the world, but it's not of it. Right, kind of the mind. Your mind is a guest. Your body is the host. Your body is hosting your mind, and your mind is sponsoring your body. So what I'm trying to say is, the body, if the being thinks they're a body, they cannot make interdimensional communication. They cannot see any sort of dimensional experience beyond what they see. So there's a lot of that's kind of like how the modern culture is. It's locking people in ivory towers of snapshots of a material angle that actually gets rid of free will. Modern society is such a weird place where on some level we're saying freedom, yeah, creativity, you know, let's not let art die, but on another angle there is no artist. We have made free will into an illusion of particles, rendering us void. So technically, in this modern world of ours, the way we're presuming nobody exists, all psychology is a hallucination, and it's just brains. It's just brains. You know? That's the way the story's being told now. I feel that is not the case. I feel the brain is the antenna. If the brain is an antenna, the signal could not be from here. It totally explains everything. You know, it explains how we are a body, yet we have experiences that surpass the body. You know, an antenna receives a signal beyond its framework, beyond its shape, right? So we are a shape receiving the world in an unshaped, dynamic, film-like way as a character and story. So I'll give you an example of something I've personally experienced. I have moved in my inner realms as a geometrical being, you know, pure geometrical state. I just have done this, you know. And the way it happened, it kind of relates to this difference between the interdimensional and the multidimensional. You have to accept your body as part of the world. So you accept your body, your physical body, as the known part of the universe. That means you're like, okay, my body is not per se just my body, it is a part of Earth right now. It is part of the physical, you can say, karmic cycle. You know, the body is in a process, in some movement, procedure. It is moving, right? The body is not a statue. You know, we have not been born to become statues. And unfortunately, belief systems that take away the person's voice are like that. They make you into a statue when you're meant to be a film in this life. The way I moved as a geometrical being was that I saw dimensions. So if I see everything right now in this moment as one dimension, I can't go anywhere. If I just think this is, if I just think my visual, my eyes are the only receiver of the actuality of what this world is, it's like 1 out of 5 of the senses is like acting like king, right? So one has to have a sort of patience with their own eyes too, not even as it as if any time anybody wants to teach something, holy shit, you gotta have patience, you know. If you have expectations whenever you want to teach, you'll kind of get so agitated, you know. Anyways, this is how I felt it happened. I felt that I noticed the inseparability of my individual physical life with the collective physical life. So I chilled out on the obsession that the body is just my body in a specific viewpoint. So when that happened, there was a preference list for the mind. When the mind is not, you know, it was for a moment like, imagine, okay, the Bhagavad Gita uses this metaphor. It uses the metaphor of the chariot driver, the horses of the chariot, and the person inside the chariot. The person inside the chariot, the unknown soul. The person that's the chariot driver is the semi-known, semi-unknown mind. And when you look at the horses are the known body. So you have to take the known. The horses pretty much have to stop. The chariot driver has to stop the wagon, and the soul from the wagon has an option to go sit on a different chariot, right? This means that in some sense it is so strange and bizarre. Like if Albert Camus was here, he'd just shout absurdity, you know, like. It's the bizarre thing that instead of death, there is only transformation. We have never known death. We have only known change. So in the chat section, Erasmo says, people think I'm the. Oh my god. So Erasmo says, people think. Oh, okay, you're actually not talking. Guys, don't fear the future that has not arrived yet. You know, how do you know the future doesn't fear you? Do you know? We shouldn't fear AI. We shouldn't fear chaos and order. We should just manage it. You know, it's like we have to become managers of the intelligence that we have only one lifetime to see what it is. Like it's so mind blowing, you know. And sometimes I ask this for myself: that why are there reservations? You know, reservations find the person in various moments. And guys, actually, before I totally go on to a different flight path, let me just finish that thing of how I became geometry in my inner realms. Just remember, let me keep going with that idea. It wasn't fully painted. Here's the thing. The chariot driver stops. When the chariot driver stops, the selfhood stops. When the selfhood stops, intelligence doesn't stop. Intelligence is there, but there is no selfhood. When there is no selfhood, technically there is literally like there is the mind is not moving the horses. So when the horses are still and the mind is still, the person in the chariot, the unknown soul, can navigate differently. So in my case, I saw parallels to the same way, like through a preference list of my mind to my body, and through a preference list of my being to whatever my mind's doing. I found a way that I notice its simultaneous existence. Every person is identifying with the stem of a leaf, but we are actually branches. That means we're multiple lives. Nobody is a single life. But in this moment, in this angle of manifestation, there is a physicality to work with, right? Because if we were, you see, we have from the beginning of time and history considered ourselves as temporary first, then eternal, right? Not from the beginning of time. I mean, certain traditions back in the day, they perceived themselves way more eternal. They saw the eternal first, but it was very hard to say the past saw it, because the past did not have the discrimination between the inner realms and the outer realms. It's a big deal that we can tell what is an object and what is a subject. I feel back in the day they couldn't tell the difference. Because they couldn't tell the difference, they felt it was real. So think of it this way: you can tell if an object and subject are different if you touch them, right? That means if in front of me there was, let's say I visualized in the air, like I don't know, a cup of coffee, and then there was an actual cup of coffee also beside my visualization hovering there, right? If I was to look at it from a distance, and if I was our ancestors from ancient times back in the day, there would not be the discrimination. There would not be an ability to be like, wait a minute, because it's like from the distance you can't touch it, but when it's up close you can touch it. Right now our species wants to touch everything, but do you know how energy is untouchable? For me, the weirdest thing has happened in society, where it was, I say scary, but not in a way where it's like we should be scared. I'm just saying it's odd. You know, sometimes there's something so odd, like, you know, so your presence is multidimensional. Your mind is interdimensional. And there's probably more words for it, guys. Probably it's not in my conscious sphere, but you know, the dimensions of the mind are different. For me, the noticing of the difference between, you see, it's easy to notice a body from a mind, but it's not easy to notice the mind from the unknown soul. Because anytime you compare yourself or your world to anything unknown, novelty is required. That means novelty is like the younger sibling of the unknown. Wherever the unknown goes, the novelty is following it. You know? For me, our language is multidimensional AF. Like, it's incredibly multidimensional, our language. You know, look at how many ways words can be used. Look at how many ways sounds can be generated. Look at how many ways symbols were just chosen. You know, that means sometimes, like for me, like, I'll tell you, it's like this. It's like, imagine your whole life you're named. You have a name. Okay, so my real name is Amin, Amin. So I can tell you that it's like, imagine your whole life being a sound, being letters, and then you're asking, like, what does that name mean, right? So then you go look up the meaning of your name. In my case, It has something to do with trust. And then, so after you look up the meaning of your name, the name you're given as a human being, then you look at that name a bit closer, you see it's just letters. And letters don't have meaning. Like color. Like, what does color mean? Right? Like, it's like, is green better than blue? Do you know what I mean? You know, is red better than yellow? Like, do you see what I mean? Like, these are the colors are just, they're just symbols. That means we as creatures, like how the ancient Greeks were suggesting, the world starts from chaos. Like, there was no meaning, no sense. The human effort is the generation of meaning. You know, it's not that life has a meaning before. It may appear that we are part of an organism that its intelligence is more. That means life, like the idea of destiny, makes sense if you feel like the cosmos is like an organism, you know, where just like when your body gets a scratch, the cells know exactly what to do. So imagine right now we are cells in the body of the universe, this body of this universal being. Now, if this universal being, let's say, gets a scratch or something, right, then assistance comes to it. So what the white blood cells kind of go to war, you know. So you can kind of think of karma being the universe healing itself. You know, it doesn't necessarily even relate to you. It's what nature is doing for itself, for the greater body of its being. You know, and I would say, in my experience, when the chariot driver, when my whole human psychology, so it was stages. So the body first, the mind became content with the body because it accepted the inevitable, right? Then the soul became content with the mind because it accepted the absolute. You now, when the absolute is accepted, it's as if going into a state of potential being. That means, think about it, for example, before Edison made the light bulb, we could have made the light bulb. Like, it's just nobody had thought of it. Nobody had seen that possibility yet. But its potential was there, right? So it's this thing that when man reverse engineers out of the linear story that has been spoon fed um, to him by his own hand and the hand of others, eventually it will just become a simplicity. So I am telling you, for a multidimensional being, there is no such thing as location. There is just intensity. there is like there is like a state of intensity and simplicity and complexity. That is it. That means that, like, for a I would say a multidimensional presence of a being, right? That presence is not, it cannot err. It cannot make an error. Let me tell you why. Because it is not judgeable. That's probably not the right word, but it's unjudgeable. Like, it's what's another word? Ineffable. You know, there's some things that they are literally touching the unknown, so it renders the concept forever a mystery. You know. When I experienced the movement as geometry, I would say it was in my inner realms. It was a subjective experience. So think of it this way: you can visualize things, and the brain is so advanced that it has an ability to concentrate, and its visualizations can be engaged like reality. That means you could be like, you know, someone who has a, you know, crush on this beautiful girl, and you don't know. who she is, but your mind creates her to you in a certain way, then that the way your mind has created her to you overwhelms you. You know what I mean? So our visualizations are actually influential. That means just because somebody can't touch, if I visualize an apple pie, I can't touch it, it doesn't mean that apple pie as an image, as a concept in the sphere of the moment doesn't influence the psyche. It does, right? And so the error that our civilization has made is that it has separated imagination and reality. We have exiled imagination. Why? Because people could not discriminate between the inner realms and the outer realms. That is the only reason why war has happened, and that's also the only method peace can come. You know, a lot of, you see, things that relate to human beings start from the human mind to to be to be given meaning, right? So it's kind of like hilarious. It's like the person when they wake up in the morning, think of it, your mind is just splashing paint over the world. Anywhere you look, imagine it's like a hose of paint, you know? Okay, Erasmo, in the chat section, I see your comment. The first thing you commented, you responded to, actually. But I'll say some, just remind me at the end to talk about the idea of the Antichrist. And let me tell you why. Because it's something that, it's like a burden on the New Age heart. I'll explain this at the end. Just remind me if the interest is there. Anyways, so back into this idea. So I'll give you an example. I closed my eyes. The moment I closed my eyes, my body wasn't there. The moment my body wasn't there, the mind was here. When the mind is here with itself, it has to learn to accept itself. If the mind can instantly accept itself, it can instantly accept itself to change. When it can instantly accept itself to change, it doesn't mean it instantaneously changes, but it starts cultivating the potentials to change. Just like a person who wants to jump from one edge of a building to another edge of a building, like those parkour videos, the person has to kind of build the momentum to jump, right? It is not something that just instantly the person can just casually walk or it happens, right? So that intensity is the mind in its non-dualism, technically realizing that it's not an ideological construct bound to reception and expression ad infinitum. It is a simple energetic witness. That means when you realize you are being before you are doing anything, that is a sort of freedom for the mind. Your being is your freedom. Because death and life are activities. They are activations. I mean, death is a deactivation, but it's not for the mind. For the mind, it's like an airplane going from the runaway, like flying, lifting off from the runaway, right? I feel that human beings should live with such rhythm and momentum, advanced momentum in their lives, that it's as if like there was this quote. I believe it was by, I don't know if it was from, oh my God, who was it from? I feel it was Khalil Gibran, but I could be wrong. It was this mystic who had said, "Live so well that death trembles to take you." Like there was some, I don't remember the exact quote. That's not the exact quote, but there was an idea. The pattern of the meme was this. Now, for example, I experience interdimensional geometric uh, um, existential locality. So I've experienced moving as a geometric shape. And guys, when I say moving, I mean, just like how you have a first-person view from your eyes in your biological body, it was a first-person view, but through a shape. I don't know how to tell you. And the mind has something where I don't know what to call it, but I feel like a plasma of the imagination, right? There is something where it's the mind is a space. It's like a room with a different temperature. It's like an activity, a faster program running right on top, overlaying another slower program. You know. Now the advantages of interdimensional, I would say the interdimensional is that usually in the way our planet has been awoken to the idea is through renunciation, honestly. Like, I can't avoid the fact that so many religious algorithms and just spiritual algorithms were in some sense a sacrifice of ignorance towards clarity. And they all had different, what's the term? Schematics for it. you know they had different designs for it. For me, the moment I freed myself from language, I remembered my presence. That presence is not ideological, that presence is unconditional. So you remember something about how you are being as whatever you're doing in this life that has nothing to do with any sort of circumstance or condition in the realm. You know, that means you feel the edge of the visible uh, through the witness. This thing I'm saying about the witness, guys, this is key because it is, in some sense, it is the world's soul in the person's mind. I don't know how to say it. Now, I could say geometric, that's like one level of talking about it. That means the soul from the chariot of the human framework going to a chariot of a geometrical framework. I would say we gotta relate it to the practicality of where the world's heading, and I feel what's going on is that there is strangely, like our species didn't have technology, so it depended on communication. Now technology has come, so that natural connection of communication has been lost. That means information transfer hasn't been lost, but the natural medium of it is being it's as if like the internet gave us information, but it also took something from us. It gave something to us, but it took something from us, right? What it took was natural evolutionary advancement. That means the internet um, made the person no longer be defined by one environment, you know? Like, I can't tell you how many different countries I've just seen YouTube videos of how life is there in that country, you know? And I haven't been to all countries, but it's one of those situations where your mind starts accessing reality that is not local to it, but as it explores becomes local to it. So I'll say it like this. Imagine right now there was an alien invasion, for example, you know. God forbid, but I'm saying, God forbid an alien invasion, Can you imagine like, you know, angels fighting aliens in a movie. Like, imagine there was an advanced alien civilization, and they hadn't made up their mind if they want to invade Earth or not, for example. You know? Imagine this alien civilization looked at Earth and was like, these creatures can't, the only way they're knowing each other is through language and speech. Do you know that means if an alien civilization wanted to invade our species, all it had to do was go into language. It had to just it could if the person thinks they're a thought, a language, you get manipulated. You know, your emotions can get so easily manipulated. You know, and some people, I'll tell you, there's people in this world that I will tell you, there's foxes in this world. Okay, and that means there are people who see the weakness of others before they see their own weakness. You know. So Erasmo, in the chat section, you say angel and alien are the same. No, no, no. It can't. It can't be. You know, because the angel doesn't exist. The angel is God. If there's God, there's no aliens. The alien is also God. You know, if there's aliens, no angels, there is no. The Abrahamic God is not in the picture. But to the human mind, of course, anything that outside of our domain of familiarity communicates to us, we either idolize it or we hate it. Like, it's two options. Like, our species is so immature. Rather than studying communication, trying to look at it from different angles, we have a fight or flight kind of response. You know, I like it or dislike it. You know, that means people have been just going past one another, liking and disliking their first impressions of everything. You know what I mean? Like, it's hilarious. You know, but really, if there is care, deeper dimensions open up. I will tell you, anybody who cares for the mysterious life of this world, you know, anyone drawn to mysticism, it's very easy. You have to become a lover of the unknown, and you cannot love what you fear. That's mysticism, the most advanced profession on this earth. The only profession that dared take off its glasses and look at the world. You know, take off the blindfold and look at the world. That is, not every human being can do that. That was what really fascinated me. I was like, oh my God, you know, I thought a king was nice. You know, like being a king, cool, yeah, kingliness. You know, then I realized these mystics are trying to surpass the illusion of the dimension. That means there's some people trying to be a king in the dimension. There's some people who are trying to find the true kingdom. You know? And you know, they say a one man's trash is another man's treasure. Do you know? It's another way of saying one person's exit is another person's entrance, or another person's entrance is another person's exit. If that alien civilization from outside of our atmosphere wanted to engage, we are so insensitive to content beyond sensory perception that we could totally be manipulated. Right now, our species has no defenses, you know. And in movies, they show nuclear bombs and, for example, weapons and, I don't know, satellite technology and all this. Let me tell you, if the aliens are not in this dimension, we can't do anything. You know, what are we gonna do? Punch air? You know, imagine in an interdimensional war, two beings and two armies in two different dimensions just hitting air, and they're like, "Yeah, we're getting the enemy." You know, I will tell you, our species has yet to understand it's multidimensional. You know, even if there was a multidimensional war, we are like noobs. We're like newbies, or what's another term? We're like amateurs, or we're like still like cadets in training or something. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. Like right now, the responsibility level of the human being is just to maintain self, and if you can, and you're nice enough, please maintain your world. This is the basic responsibility, but it should be where we should be right now, should be the advanced civilization. The backup systems to the advanced civilization are all set in place, you know? And then there is efforts. You see, it's like this idea of, does the person want to maintain a low quality journey of their eyes, or does the person want to build up to a high quality journey of their eyes, right? If I didn't care about the quality of existence, I wouldn't have anything to say about it. If this world was perfect to me, I would have nothing to say. But it's because the imperfection is coming because the result generates an emotion. Right now, our entertainment has painted the picture that the world is an incredibly safe place. But there is so much chaos happening, and the only way violence can be countered is not by fighting, but by awakening. I'll give you an example. I'll keep this example in a distant way, like I'll say it, but there was someone I knew, and they knew someone, let me say it this way, that person was a producer, okay? And that means a producer with a studio, and they would in some sense record music for musicians. Now, a dangerous person, a person who, for example, like a, you know, a kind of very, you know, intense figure, like a person who had come and used the studio services, and was acting dangerous, as if he was showing that he had something dangerous and whatnot. This is the story of someone's. This is like a relay of a relay. I'm telling you what I'm telling you. But anyways, the whole point is the person was in a dangerous situation, and what the person did was like they just stood their ground, the studio owner, and there were certain dangerous musicians in the studio. And he said he literally sat down and rationalized what could happen. What were the options, right? And he's like, you guys can disturb me, I can come in later on disturb you, we can call, get the, for example, authorities involved, or you guys can just leave right now. You know, so he literally gave options, and it was literally like a moment where a mind was countering a dangerous situation, right? And violence leads to danger, you know? So in some sense, I'm telling you, it's the use of our mind that is going to bring the peace on earth. You know, that means technically if everybody was internally just had enough common sense to be like, yeah, maybe civilization should kind of advance, you know? The reason there's a lot of violence, cruelty, and messed up shit happening on the earth, excuse my language, but it's because we have lost our honor. And there is not an easy redemption system. And these are all symptoms of a civilization that needs to update. And the update can't come from, you know, aliens can't come and build the human civilization, squirrels and birds, and they can't come and build the alien civilization. It is only human life that will advance the empire of human life. The kingdoms of human life, its walls are built by the hands of man, you know? And so we have to regain the honor of our species. Like that's the whole thing that's missing. Because let me tell you, honor is a is the um, um, It is keeping the important alive in your inner realms. Keeping what is important in your outer realms alive in your inner realms. That's it. It's technically the mind's test, you know. We have to be so advanced as a species that we not only have advanced mapping algorithms, this means advanced techniques for any human being, okay? Where in the future, let's say we realize there's even parallel, like I've written a science fiction novel like this. Imagine there's parallel universes. Guys, my attention is taken by the chat section. Erasmo, also, you say it's a war over consciousness that's multidimensional. No, 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 no. The only war on this planet is not seeing how the nature of what is. This is the only war. Energy can't fight itself. So the war is ignorance. When I say multidimensional, when I say battlefield, because I'm thinking of the temporary human biology. A multidimensional being, its war, like if you think about it, how do you injure a multidimensional being? You can never injure the multidimensional. You can only occupy their attention. And so imagine a sci-fi context, there's different parallel universes of Earth, and in my science fiction novel I created this idea that in the year 5025 there's this government to humanity called the Enlightened Society. And this is the first government in human history that is governing multiple parallel universes of Earth, multiple dimensions of Earth at the same time. You know? So imagine you wanted to make contact with another human, uh, let's say a parallel human self. The contact cannot be in words, it cannot be in dialogue, it cannot be even seen in bodies. If there is to be true contact, there has to be union with the different dimensions. So think of it this way. If you are looking at life as a leaf, you don't see the branch, you don't see other leaves, you only see yourself, you only see your reality. But if you access the branch through the presence that is beyond the personality, then you get access to multiple leaves, right? So when I say interdimensional communication, it's like when you are the branch, you don't need to communicate as the leaf you were before. You know? Interdimensional means your soul, your presence is like the center of a circle, and you're experiencing different degrees. So that's the interdimensional ability. We can't travel, we can't journey to dimensions, to another dimension as an individual per se, but we can literally pause the chariot of one dimension and get on the chariot of another dimension if we are ready, and if it's not a childish desire to play with the multidimensional. Let me tell you, that when it comes to the unknown, treat it's for those who, I would really say, it's the karma yogi and the raja yogis enlightenment. But those who are bhakti yogis, the unknown doesn't need to be understood, right? For the raja yogi is the person who's using the path of knowledge to attain clarity, right? So eventually all knowledge leads to the unknown, right? You can't control the outcome. That's the main lesson, right? And then for the karma yogi who's using work, the path of work, that means the person's put knowledge on the side, and their work and their how they work and how they move is becoming their enlightenment, their path of enlightenment. For the karma yogi, it is to the unknown. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing this all for? 99.9 species percent, 99.9% of species go extinct. And let me tell you, the thing is that fact is not enough. That life is a living performance, and the most basic view is that it's like we exist to participate. There is a challenge that arises when we wonder about the interdimensional, multidimensional. There's a type of scolding that happens. You see, if you were to look at the evolution of behavior, or behavior towards the truth of the realm, we would see that there was a point people were just creatures in nature. Then people became creatures separate to nature, and they started having a relationship as a participant in nature, as an individual in nature, right? So the creature felt like the ecosystem. It wasn't conscious. Then it became conscious. It felt it's in the ecosystem, right? Then the creature managed to find a relationship where it saw itself outside of the ecosystem. And when it saw itself outside of the ecosystem, it had seen enough of a deviation that in some sense it could derive itself differently. So you can say we separated ourselves from nature and then started separating everything and naming it. You know? There is this yogic wisdom that says this truth seeker that goes on the path of truth and through sincere insight will over some time attain powers. Okay, these powers were called CDs, not like CDs, like CDS, like I mean like SIDDHIS. If your name is Sid, you probably agree with me. So, let's say you're a person named Sid. Let's go with that. You stopped fighting, you stopped resisting the world, you understood the value of cultivating inner peace, you understood the value of getting to see what your eyes truly are. And so Sid suddenly attains powers. Let's say a city, like it was called in yogi, what was it called? Uh, by locality. Pretty much, in certain yogis had an ability to be present in multiple places at the same time. You know, that means, for example, a person would see the yogi in like India, another person would see the yogi in China. The actual, like a person in that city would see the yogi there, kind of, right? So it was like a mind movement, you know. Or another ability was commanding the moment. Some yogis had the ability to simply, and it's something. The whole point of these abilities are they're not to be used because the abilities are not from the ego. They shouldn't be used by the ego. Because the abilities are beyond the ego, they are used when the beyond moves in. You know, that means it's like think of it this way: the master swordsman doesn't take out the sword and show it off. You know, the master swordsman keeps the sword hidden only when necessary or for the task at hand. Only when all the simple solutions to the moment have been implemented and they have failed, then it becomes time for complex solutions and complex characters. You know. So, the person would get ability and power. They would realize this power as more and more they understood the inseparability of the individual activity with the cosmic activity. That's really what happens. You think at first the energy of your body is what belongs to you. Then you realize the whole world is energy. Then you laugh at needing energy. You know, I would say when it comes to the energy of the mind, it is filled with. We are energy. Right now, it's not a, it's energy talking to you. You believe it? Energy that, based on the first law of thermodynamics, cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form to form. Literally, energy is another synonym for soul, guys. Journeying from form to form, from life to life. And I feel every heart deep down knows if they have done enough. That's the challenge. You know, that's the hardest thing about life. That the person has a potential, yet they never see. That means, I'll be honest, in order to access novelty, you have to be a fool. Every explorer to a new land was a fool. Do you know, imagine somebody a human being that had never experienced mud before, right? The human being stepped to like some terrain and stepped on mud. Do you know? And the person's like, his mind blew. He's like, oh my god, this land is sinking. Like, the first person who stepped in mind, it was like a psychedelic experience for them. The first human. Consciously, of course. That consciousness. Right now, I feel it's like everybody's intelligence is like a Tetris game. Endless forms, shapes, designs, ways to process the moment have just come and gone. And it's like they have fallen down, and we are the most recent layer of the Tetris, you know. So the yogi, the truth seeker, will eventually notice truth and itself the same. Therefore, there will be access to power. Now, from non-duality, you want to become dual. That requires what I call inner authorization. And it's something close to your conscience. What your conscience is like a messenger pigeon coming from the unconscious, but this would be your consciousness goes to the unconscious. So think of it that there's a modality where the unconscious comes to you, you have a dream, and then you have a dream in real life, and you are going towards the unconscious of the world and trying to make something conscious, you know? And so it depends on how deeply you have understood yourself as a being. If you are an object, the other, the invisible other, is going to be like, you're going to think God, truth is a bigger fish. Do you know? If you know yourself as an attributeless mind, you're going to realize there is no attribute of truth with an attribute, so you watch when the unknown moves itself again. You know? You know that right now I notice there's something going on in the New Age community, and it's something that I feel they don't realize it. People of the likes of Eckhart Tolle, Muji, you know, um, all those people who have found a behavioral algorithm beyond the I thought. Okay, it's not enough to in the inner realms be in heaven. The great game of human life is to bring heaven from behind your eyes, in front of your eyes, while you can, while you're here. That is it. And this means faith of such a collective outer realm vision. If you feel like a drop, you fear evaporation. If you feel like a river, your moment is endlessly simulating. But for the witness, there is no human response to the whole moment. No human response is enough. When the self-simulation ends, the person notices the world simulation. When the world simulation ends, the person notices the self that was superior to the world. And the way the system is designed, this universal sphere, and a sphere in an unknown cube, the individual is driven towards collective realization. Let's say the collective is driven towards individual realization. And so the body's pretty much endlessly experiencing itself being destroyed, and the mind is endlessly creating. You know what it is? It's like in the middle of me trying to explain this, I'm trying to explain the world, and the world is experientially present, but it is existentially here, right? So it's as if like existence is limited to how we're experiencing it, and existence is limited to how we're experiencing it. And so freedom can't be an existential solution only, and freedom can't just be an experiential solution only. That means it's perhaps we have reached an era in our history where nirvana is not enough. Eventually it will become multidimensional. Wherever you are in the world, you can close your eyes and just envision, like a film, this world fast forwarding and seeing all the ways that human beings can live, as if your imagination is released in the fields of its own kingdoms. It's like the body cries. Or I should say it like this: the body is silent when it changes. The mind cries over not spilled milk, but over the broken. And you know, we have designed a civilization that makes the lost soul feel a stranger in the only world it has found so far. A species in the denial of its greatness. The soul couldn't laugh anymore. The future is impatient. And that's the most beautiful thing about it. It's just like the nature of the mind. You see a better algorithm, you can't repeat the same algorithm. Not normally, but in the same way. That means it's like when your eyes open, you're no longer in a world where it's as if they're closed. I feel if the species is willing, there should be this revolution, this renaissance, this behavioral, for the first time in our history, a global psychological renaissance. Where human beings were like, you know, let us not be so soft, and let us begin entertaining advanced archetypes of the self. If the brain has an ability to project an inefficient archetype, it 100% has an ability to project an efficient archetype. That means anybody can look at anything inefficient in their life, think about the reverse, and then compare it out until they find a workable strategy. So this is I would say, right now I kind of see the vision clearly. This behavioral renaissance is going to happen in the strangest way, not in taking away something. We don't want to change because it's not practical. Not everybody can change their ways. So instead of changing the system that we have to implement, it's making it multidimensional. That means instead of seeing people, that means we get this impression that no human being can be judged because they have an unknown river-like mind. So because human beings have unknown minds, we can only judge with the tip of the iceberg of what they express about the mind space they are, you know? So in an advanced civilization, the multidimensional will have access to citizenship. So that means there is no good and bad person. There is just which timeline, which time plane, which parallel simulation of a value system of the world the person has chosen to walk in. Do you know, we become precise, like accountant level precise, you know, of the sensitivity of how we are simulating our world into reality. We are technically imagining our reality, you know, or our imagination is real. You know, we can't dismiss imagination. It's something where, because its content engages us, technically a person's relationship with their imagination is interdimensional. It's like your thoughts are in an invisible room. You can't see what we're in. So let's think of it this way, that what we experience as human life is 50% local, like existential, 50% the mind is doing something. It's the mind's dance. It's the, excuse me, not the mind, the brain's dance, okay? You know? Or an activity. So we can say we are never able to see actually the outer realms. We see we're never able to see the world. We see light, you know, plus the imprinted information on the light, plus our brain activity. That means, in some sense, like all we have ever seen is just attention activating existence. Instantaneously. Now, we don't have a collective multidimensional structure like what I'm saying, body, mind, soul. This is archaic. This is pretty old school. The best way we can say it is, let's render everybody as a communication of nature, so everybody is a communicator. The mind is a communicator, or you can say the mind is part of the communication of the universal sector. So something is happening on a universal level. We are a part of that universal level, so we can't just own our own minds and say it's just my mind. No, 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 no. It's also the whole world happening at once, right? And it's kind of butterfly effect, and some mathematicians and chaos theorists suggest kind of interconnectivity there. So pretty much we're not mature enough to be a universal being. If you can be a universal being, aim for it. Society needs to learn from the universal. But if you can't be a universal being, at least try to be a global being, you know? And if you can't be a global being, you're not a human being. You're some weird um, ideological entity, you know? That means it has always from the beginning been a planet. Imagine there was someone in Asia, their first name was Earth and their last name was Link. You know, we are Earthlings, you know, and that person would by name also be an Earthling. You know, it's just the roar of the living before the void takes the steering wheel. It's a rare opportunity to be a human being alive at a time where beyond subjective identity, the objects are being moved. There, we have to usher in the global sapien. And then there will be cyberspace evolution. Pretty much we're going to live in two bodies, but one body is going to be in a digital. So let's say you're a person and you've, like Texas Hold'em, been born somewhere in the world where you are, I don't know, you have been given a sort of unique approach to the metaphysical, or you've been in an environment where there has been an ideological strategy given, you know? True multidimensionality has to have the explorers, like there has to be a journey. That person won't feel they deserve something unless from within them the energy has done something. Do you know? That means you can say um, crime happens because of a lack of creativity. That means the person could not find a solution from their inner realms. Like imagine in 30 years, probably it's going to be like that, where you're going to have children, just their minds are going to be like their studios. Like the children will not ask for too many objects in the future because their inner realms are becoming more and more clear, right? And if we can ground the idea, this idea of the inner realm and outer realm, because technically what has been happening in history is the division, right? So it's like something coming back to a singular point, then exploding, then coming back to a singular point, then exploding. Technically, the universe is like the heartbeat of a universal being, you know? once the species awakens from the slumber of the linguistic simulation, the presence of the human being begins living rather than just the personality of the being. The presence is the authorization of the mind after its contentment with familiarity, so it's literally the cup is full to the brim with such contentment, you know, that whatever pours out, there's no fear of it, you know. So proper metaphysics is like you fill the cup to the brim, then you add water and see what pours out slightly, you know. But for physics, if you in some sense doubt what's in the cup, you're never going to care about what's beyond it, the surplus, you know. It's kind of like how they would say, if they make you ask the wrong question, they don't have to worry about your answer, right? Let's say you're raised in a environment to be like, let's say you're the Buddha. You're the Buddha, and you've been born at a time where Brahmanism was before Buddhism. Therefore, people were doing weird rituals all over the land in India to find an access to truth, right? And the Buddha found a way. He tried many paths. He even got close to death at some point. You know, the Buddha has a story where he was literally like, he had tried this path of asceticism where by not eating, he thought it was like enlightening, right? And then his body had become so weak, he couldn't get up from the place he had sat, you know? And so he suddenly in that moment realized he had failed, right? And out of nowhere, like it's like a story, like out of nowhere, this girl with a bowl of rice appears and gives him a bowl of rice, and he starts eating that bowl of rice and comes back to life. Do you know? And then he goes on different paths. Eventually, he notices the suffering of the outer realms is not from the outer realms. Then he sits down under the tree. And I feel this is where the silent mantra Om, the silent divine finds him. The attribute is the one, his own mind. His, in some sense, the Buddha means the awakened one. The Buddha sits down and realizes suffering starts from the outside, but it's being held onto from the inside. He suddenly really freed his inner hands. And there's a story of Mara and his sisters that, in some sense, shoot and attack Buddha in his inner realms. They attack Buddha with arrows, and Buddha instantly turns them into lotus flowers. So Buddha, at a time of intense, and something else happens too, when Buddha, he suddenly gets this profound realization of the presence of the world prior to anything being done, having to change it. And he's very silent when he opens his eyes. And his friend Ananda is there, and Ananda looks at Buddha and he sees there's something off, there's something different. You know, and he looks at Buddha and he's like, what have you realized? And Buddha is just silent. Just supremely silent. You know? And Ananda just sits beside him quietly. That means the ears of the soul don't need words. They receive the moment as the whole moment. It doesn't matter what's in it. So, from now, imagine we're not like alive at Buddha's time, but there's endless self-ritualization going on, right? Self-ritualization as a sort of countercultural rebellion against the meaningless information uh, explosions found through mediums, right? So it's this strange situation where people are trying to protect themselves from a world that, in some sense, is not what they want. So, in some sense, their inner realms kind of just begin justifying their minds. They start living with the freedom of their mind's life. You know, there's some people who I know that are personally, they're incredibly you can even say that by their own voice, they have said they're spiritual people. You know, they've said some incredible things, but they don't speak. They, when they go walk in certain situations, they're the silence of the moment. You know, that means they don't even see themselves as a spiritual person, because that spirituality is still searching. The spirituality that wants to be spiritual is searching. It hasn't understood it yet. It hasn't understood that it's beyond an object or a subject. So the person seeks for, I don't know, catalogs of truth being ordered in the mail. Like, what is this world even? You know, people are selling truth even. Do you believe that? They're like, hey man, you know, truth, buy this truth and you'll get the second one half off, you know? Like, that's the kind of world we live in, you know? The human mind is too precious. It is the great treasure of the species, every person's mind. That means when a person really, in earlier talks of mine, I said you find the love of the species, you suddenly realize, okay, the same way you have loved your family, your friends, whatever, even your puppy, you know, whatever way you have loved the world, now you're loving the presence of humankind. Yes. So, let us make the ancient Greeks who contributed to the advancements of the logos in human culture, which they said pretty much the purpose, the aim of this world is to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. We want to advance. We're not apes in forests to have violent solutions. It doesn't make sense, you know, and we're not just you know, just minds that have no body, so there's no need to do anything. You know, you could say that's technically being spiritually lazy when you think you're already in heaven. You know, you know, because then you're not. See, it's as if it's a fear of the outer realms, to render every moment or stamp every moment as one emotion. For me, it's like, you know how there's discrimination of color. It's like discrimination of emotion. In my inner realms, I've envisioned advanced communicators in the future. They are like the paladins of the species. We have various types of incredible public servants in the world, at least here in Canada, you know. And what that means is like we have found a way to create a system that we're serving, in some sense, the physical, the outer realms of human beings. There's public servants. Now I feel there should be, in some sense, advanced communicators, right? And advanced communicators are pretty much beings, I would say, that have freedom from language. So it doesn't matter what situation they go in, they can watch the language. They can notice how the movement, how the moment is becoming animate. You know, pretty much it's the shaman of language. That means it's like so the advanced communicator, I even thought about it as an advanced communicating officer even in the future, right? Human beings who they care for communication, and they extremely care for how quickly communication can become ignorance between people and just for oneself, right? Language is strange. Language is like a box where you're opening it up and you're seeing like a, very cute hamster, right? Then it's like, it's sometimes though that language, you could look at it and it's a cute hamster, then it suddenly becomes like this giant Hulk, like a monster of a hamster. Then you have to use like, I don't know, alpha eye contact to like calm it down. You know what I mean? It's like, eventually I donated that hamster to Hulk, but can you imagine? But I'm saying that's the thing about language. Or you can, this may be too graphic, but I'll share it because the species is brave enough to attain, to advance beyond this imagery. But like, imagine we opened a box and there was an alien that jumped out, and this alien covered your eyes and you couldn't see anymore. That's what language is doing, right? And it's not that language is right or wrong. It's that language, if you think you're it, you are lost in it. You are lost by the definition you give yourself. That means, if imagine, I'll give you an example of a person who's defined by language and a person who isn't. Okay, a person who is defined by language, they think they're a thought. Let's say they've been, when they were younger, somebody told them, "You're a good boy," you know, or "You're a good girl," whatever, right? And so this person goes on in their life, and suddenly they've been told they're a good person. They don't know anything else. It's like, how could they not be a good person? That's what the world set up for, communicated to them, right? And imagine this person, suddenly someone comes up to him, and this person does something, and this person's like, "Hey man, you're a bad person. You're a bad girl or a bad boy or something, you know." And so this person who's defined by language would be like, "No, I'm not a bad person. I'm not a bad person." Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? They would fight the language that is changing. So it's laziness with having an ability to observe the changing of subjects throughout the objective life. Right? Now, somebody not defined by language, right? Let's say somebody, when they told them you were good, they'd be like, "Okay, thank you." Do you know? And when later on something happened, somebody told them you're bad, they're like, "Okay, thank you." Because the eyes have their own life, regardless of what outside of it says. And that's why I'm saying those who truly hear my talks, I consider are those who they suddenly realize that what I'm saying is a mirror of their experiences. That means anything profound or anything interesting I have said, and the person has seen something in their inner realms, that's your slow hand clap for your own brain. Do you know? Because on some level, what I communicate, it's alive when I'm communicating it to me. Right? Afterwards, it becomes like an artwork or like a crust of bread that's cooled down after you take it out of the oven. just pretty much this episode, I wanted to share some observations on the multidimensional guys. Really, it's literally what's left. We've experienced the the unconscious individual. We've experienced, you know, the conscious. We've experienced the unconscious individualism, and we've experienced the conscious individualism. Now we've experienced an unconscious collectivism. We haven't seen the potential. Like, nobody on this planet knows how advanced human beings can be if they were like birds, like, you see in National Geographic, like the birds flying together in like rhythms or something, right? The thing is that human beings, their free will kind of gives the human being a choice to deviate from nature's kind of contract, you know. If the being considers they're manipulated, they will think everything is manipulating them. It's just the nature of fear and love. If there is love, there is not fear, because you're being what you are. You're not. There is no imposition from the space of your own being. I feel that the way we can engage the interdimensional and multidimensional, first of all, science fiction has already, before me starting to talk about this, it's like has already been a path. Science fiction is a great theoretical research for the multidimensional and the interdimensional. The issue with the interdimensional is that there's the center of the dot is there, and the multidimensional is like in some sense more concerned with the circumference of the circle. I'll say something cool, like even like we're literally an onion layer that doesn't know there's greater onion layers. Now, what we think is that the whole world is not alive, so we have this thing that only human beings communicate in the world. We don't have a view that nature communicates, or the planet communicates, or the sky communicates, or space communicates. Do you know? But now imagine the dimensions we're talking to one another. That means I thought about it in this way. Imagine, like, they say it in yogic Vedic thought that, like, I don't know the exact number, but it was something like, I don't know, this is what I remember. It was like 54 million years of human life is equal to 3 days of like a god sleeping. I don't know if it's Krishna or Vishnu. I think then in that one case it was Krishna. But so a higher dimensional God, we are like the dream of God in Vedic thought. So technically we are the dream of the higher dimensions. This is why when you go to the higher dimensions you feel your awakening, you know? Because really the earth is from earth, but what is moving on earth is not from earth. In the yogic stance. So, if imagine it's 3 days of sleep, now imagine God is not sleeping in Vedic thought, in Vedic theology, polytheology. Imagine there is, God has woken up, God is not sleeping, God is not dreaming. When God is not dreaming anymore, we are. It's as if the dream doesn't exist, or we were the eyes of the dreamer who's woken up. So it could be that the apocalypse is like God waking up. You know? Can you imagine, like, at a point where there was no imagination? This world is here not just for a physical consequence, and it is not just here for an infinite consequence, an endless consequence. This world actually is never here. It is here by the mere presence of a field of attention choosing to localize. So what it means is that every human being who in some sense wants to pilot as an attention, they want to awaken to the presence of their attention prior to their personality. It is simply that there is a stillness and silence that Sri Ramana Maharshi said it like this: if you stop chasing truth, the wisdom is already following you. It will find you if you stop. When I say stop searching for truth, I mean stop searching for like the carrot on the stick kind of truth. Your presence um, is union beyond conception is never in conception. All that one can do in a temporary world, you cannot live in a temporary world. So it's as if like the elemental lease is up, you know, after a certain point in life. You know, you're not immortal yet. So when the elemental lease leaves, it means the presence you. Think of it this way: every being is going to realize what is in this room before they were at some point in this life. And at any point in this life they can realize. You know, regardless of if there is a ritualistic algorithm, regardless of if there is no algorithm needed, it comes to the state of the heart. And really, it's a suggestion of what the person deep down has drawn arms for. Because the human psychology sometimes gives itself victory before victory. So then, in the moment where it should actually be looking at the battlefield properly, it's assuming victory. And so there's dissonance. We have to be multidimensional. Because we're an object and a subject at the same time. Two eyes see the same, unknown mind and known body being the moment. And all we can do is physically move, call it physical communication, and we can in some sense communicate non-physically, like through sound, you know, or other technological mediums, or we can in some sense communicate through being. There was this quote, I don't know who said it, but it was like, if somebody doesn't understand your silence, they won't understand your words. This is why I feel like the heart is where the long-term memory activates. you live from your heart, life becomes art. Some t-shirt companies who are looking for slogans are getting enlightened, right? Anyways, to bring this to a landing point, we have to learn to move as objects. We have to learn to move as a subject identifying with the object. We have to also learn to move as a subject not identifying with the object. If we as a species learn to move as a subject not identifying with the object, for the first time there comes the freedom of mind, which is boundless, because mind can't be defined. So that means if you want to give freedom to the body, it has to do with giving it space. But because the mind is already space, what freedom can you give to it? You know, you can't free your mind, you can free your mind from yourself. You know, that means your mind can free itself from you. You can't free your mind, you know? That means it's like the truth seeker could be the missing link. That means their approach could be what's causing the lack of truth. That means if a person wants something, that means you don't have it. But if the person treats like they have, in some sense, I don't know, I'm not saying don't have desires in this life, you know, because that would be too robotic. I mean, a robot doesn't have desires, you know. It's just, it has its program. But I'm saying, like, think of it this way: you cannot love someone if you cannot see who they really are. And you cannot love the world if you cannot see what the world truly is. And it comes to the unknown. And scholars are those who have noticed this. That's why there's a freedom to explore the linguistic simulation. Because right now we have no choice. Right now, I every day I wake up wondering what's going to come after language. For me, I feel it's a geometric language, but to fathom human beings becoming geometry in the outer realms is like, it could be too much, you know. So it's the strange situation where I'm like, we have the strength to build a very advanced civilization, but we don't have the citizens for an advanced civilization. So even if we build an advanced civilization and the citizens aren't ready, it's as if we've just built a big building. You know what I mean? There's no point. That means it's like it wouldn't be different if we had built it or not, right? So it has to come from the willingness of human life to advance itself, and after some point to realize that it is okay to feel collective victory is also your victory. Most people do the reverse, right? You know? This is the only world where we can be bold, where we can do things. Beyond this plane of existence, there's no saying how much doership there resides. There's no saying if energy, matter resurfaces ideologically or it shifts into different gears, right? So it has to be utilized, right? So it's as if, imagine a child in the future, born in advanced civilization, says, what's the purpose of life, right? What's the meaning of life? The young child asks this from a parent in an advanced civilization, right? The parent would say, the purpose of life is that we're all waiting for you. And the child would be like, what do you mean? And the parent would be like, this world we're living in, we imagine this is in an advanced civilization, right? So the parent would say everything in civilization, if we have human beings after some point realize it is so much cooler if everything advances, not just one thing advances. You know, like, so it's the parent would look at the child and say, you, I don't know.
I'm just trying to say, like, the parent would say something in the sense of, like, listen, kid, we're all temporary beings. The species is on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Language is self-created, self-accepted, and some language correlates, checks out with the outer realms. Some language only checks out with the inner realms, you know? And so, like, the parent would look at the child and be like, yeah, everybody's literally waiting for the new generations to come and, like, update this thing, you know? So the child would suddenly be in a world that is waiting for it. And the child would be like, what happens if I don't advance? And the parents like, oh, don't worry about it. Nobody ever. Like, the norm is, it's always easier to break a house of cards than build it, you know? So it's easier not to care. It's so easy. But the challenge is, how can we care and that be easy? How can we create a system where it's easy to care? To, like, imagine you turned on the news and endless advancements, endless victories from all around the globe just being changed. That means the channels of the planet became liberated globally. But of course, I mean, the world is changing. It's like right now we're looking at TV screens, or computer screens, phone screens. Right, in the future, it's like our eyes might be that screen. That means, what if there was a... Can you imagine somebody installed a technology inside their eyeball that would shoot laser beams outside? Somehow workable. Anyways. And the cool thing about the idea of an advanced civilization, that the vision of it, if somebody was like, how would it look like? The whole point is to be so advanced that in every moment it is advancing, so it never has a shape. It's like a river of advancement, you know? Some people are listening to this and they're like, too soon, too soon. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Just be as sincere and simple. Some people say when looking at life, start from simple principles. So think of it this way: that the person wants to see their own existence functionable in simple dimensions. Then simplicity builds up to become complexity. So you must learn to see first. Don't seek other dimensions. Don't try to be an esoteric person. Try to look at nature. Go look at trees, leaves, everything, and do the search from scratch. Wonder about how your eyes, if you were just teleported here, like from somewhere else, how would your eyes rediscover the multidimensionality of what is actually going on? For me, I respect those people who they have realized, they have that attitude that, okay, there are things the species doesn't know yet. When you realize there's things the species doesn't know yet, there is an explorer camaraderie, but there isn't glorification, right? There's no time, right? It's literally just like the Night's Watch sending exhibitions beyond the wall, right? But in some sense, think of this in regards to an advanced a way of acknowledging communication, right? It's like, well, our body is a biological program, and that's technically everything's being communicated. Life is being communicated into me. That means just breathing, like that's the body's communication, That means technically my heart, every time it beats or when I listen to my breath, that's technically like singing. My body is singing, It's just not the best song, but it's anyways, guys, if you don't fear the simple, you won't fear the complex. If you fear the simple, if you doubt the simple, you will doubt the complex. You will never see the complex. And these are just words at the end of, you know, the time of this talk, because of the time. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be on Discord, and